Now, let's discuss an area that causes many scorers problems, making in-game substitutions. You should contact BIS if you are having any problems in this area. It is very important to get substitutions correct the first time, as fixing a mistake in this area is often troublesome. In this example, Eduardo Nunez will pinch hit for Eric Bruntlett. To make the sub, select Substitutions up top and choose Offensive Substitution, since the change is being made to the lineup of the team that is batting. The software will give you the correct team, as it can tell which team you need based on whether you select offensive or defensive substitution. Subs will get entered as a drag and drop, similar to how you entered the starting lineup. Now, we find Eduardo Nunez under the ends. Here, we have him, and then we drop him into Bruntlett's position, which is by home plate since he is the batter. If you had a pinch runner instead, you'd drag the sub to the name of the runner he is replacing, which should be by the base that the runner is occupying. Once the needed change is done, hit next, and the sub is made. Now, we can see that Eduardo Nunez has replaced Eric Bruntlett as the batter. An excellent feature of the software is that once the half inning ends, it will prompt you for a defensive substitution for the Yankees and won't let you proceed without making one. This helps to prevent user error, as we know they have to make a sub due to the pinch hitter. Defensive subs are done in a similar fashion. Select Substitutions, and this time select Defensive Substitution. Here, you see a screen that is pretty much identical to the screen you see when entering the starting lineups. The easiest case is when you have a straight 1-for-1 sub or multiple subs where each player bats in the same spot in the lineup as the player he is replacing. For instance, let's say the Iron Pigs make two changes here. Mike Stutes replaces Drew Carpenter at pitcher, and Andy Tracy replaces Neil Sellers at first base. The Iron Pigs aren't giving up the DH, so Stutes will replace Carpenter in the hit for spot, and Tracy will bat in the same spot in the order as Sellers, which is 7th. Now, we just drag and drop the names of the subs to the defensive positions they will be playing, similar to when we entered the starting lineup. So, we find Stutes, alright, there he is, and drop his name to the pitcher spot on the field to replace Carpenter. Next, we find Tracy, here we go, and we drop him into the first base position to replace Sellers. We can see that our changes are now reflected, with Tracy batting 7th and Stutes in the hit for position at the bottom. We're all set, so we hit next. Here we can see that our changes are made. Let's go over an example that trips up even the best of scorers sometimes, the double switch. We're already at the defensive substitution screen, and Greg Golson is going to replace Edward Gonzalez in right field and hit second, while Ricci Corona is going to replace Kevin Russo at second base, batting 9th. This is not a straight 2-for-2 switch like in the previous example, as Gonzalez is batting 9th, while his sub will bat second, and Russo is hitting second, but his sub will bat 9th. Therefore, we had the dreaded double switch. The simplest approach to this, resulting in the least chance of error, is to start off by removing all players from the lineup who leave the game when a double switch occurs. So, I'll click Russo and select Remove, and I'll click Gonzalez and select Remove. As you can see, both players are no longer in the lineup. This will result in two unoccupied spots in the field, second base and right field. If you remove the correct players, the unoccupied positions will always correspond to the positions that the subs will be playing. Now we drop the subs into their positions. So I find Golson and drag him to right field. The software will ask where he bats in the lineup since multiple spots in the batting order are unaccounted for. I said before that he was going to hit second, so choose second. Likewise, I'll drop Corona into second base and select ninth as his spot in the batting order. We're all set now, so we hit next. As you can see, we successfully made our double switch. As I said before, fixing a mistake involving a substitution can be problematic. However, no one's perfect and mistakes will happen, so I'm going to walk you through examples of the most common ways a mistake with a sub occurs. The most likely mistake with a sub is that you forgot to enter a sub. For instance, in our Yankees Iron Pigs game, let's say that Paul Hoover replaced Dane Sardinia at catcher to begin the top of the second inning. We need to go to the top of the second, so we click on that entry in the line score, and we now see the summary for top 2. Now we scroll up to the first batter of the inning. The sub needs to be inserted before the first pitch of the first at-bat, since I said the sub happened at the beginning of the inning. Right-click on the first pitch to the first batter and select Insert Above. Now you see a list of items to insert. Select Defensive Substitution. Now we find Hoover and drag him to catcher to make the sub. All looks good, so hit Next. The same defensive substitution screen appears, and we now have to verify the Iron Pigs lineup at each subsequent point that they made a sub. Here, we're at the spot in the top of the second where the Iron Pigs made a change during Eduardo Nunez's at-bat. As you can see, the software tells us in the lower left where we are in the game. The software still has Sardinia in at catcher, which is incorrect since we just inserted Hoover there. Let's find Hoover in the roster and do the drag and drop with him to catcher, just like we did when we inserted the sub. Now, hit Next. Now, we're back at the summary for the top of the second. If the Iron Pigs had made further subs, we would have had to verify the lineup at each of those points as well. Normally, verifying the lineup just entails making sure that the guy that we had to insert into the lineup is in the game at each subsequent point. The other common thing that can happen is that you pick the wrong player as the sub by accident. For instance, let's say that we wanted to sub Antonio Bastardo in at pitcher for the Iron Pigs to begin the top of the third, but we picked Dennis Baez by mistake. Easy to do since those two guys are right by each other in the roster. We catch this mistake right away though, so we're in pretty good shape. Fix this by right-clicking on Defensive Substitution and then select Delete to remove the sub. The software will ask you if you're sure that you want to delete the substitution. Say yes. Now redo the sub, making sure to pick Bastardo this time, and we should be all set. The worst case scenario is if you proceed deeper into the game before realizing that you entered the wrong guy. For instance, let's say I proceeded a couple of innings before I had to make another sub in the top of the fifth. When I get to the defensive sub screen, I see Baez on the mound, and I realize I made a mistake. Let's say Brian Gordon was the next pitcher into the game. I'll make that sub since I'm already set to do it. Now I need to go back to fix the previous sub so that I have Bastardo in the game instead of Baez. Bastardo came into the game in the third, so I need to go back there to make the fix. I scroll up to the batter that Baez came in for, and right-click on Defensive Substitution. Now, instead of selecting Delete, I'm going to choose Edit. Delete will work, but it's a more drawn-out process since you'll need to verify the lineups both after deleting the original sub and then after re-entering the sub with the correct guy. Edit will bring up the familiar defensive substitution screen. I see the lineups as they were at the time this mistaken Baez sub was made. What I meant to do then was sub in Bastardo, so I'll do that and hit Next. Now, I need to verify the Iron Pigs lineup when they made their next sub. This is at the point to begin the top of the fifth, and the lineup here is correct, as this is when Brian Gordon came into the game replacing Bastardo. Since all is good, I hit Next to proceed. One last thing needs to be done to completely fix this problem. The one thing the software doesn't do is save the handedness of the new pitcher when making a fix like this. If the two pitchers involved throw with the opposite hand, as is often the case, then we have a problem. As it turns out, in our example, Bastardo is a lefty, while Baez is a righty. Scroll up to the first batter that Bastardo faced, and right-click on the first pitch he threw. Select Edit, and we'll get the Edit Situation screen. Here we see that while Bastardo is a lefty, we have him saved as throwing from the right side. Thankfully, this is trivial to fix. Click Modify Mode near the bottom in the middle, and hit Save and Next repeatedly until you can't go any further. When you can't go any further, you've gotten to the end of the inning, so now select Save and Close. Let's verify that we did this correctly. Let's go back to the first pitch that Bastardo threw and bring up the Edit Situation screen again. Now we see the saved hand matches up with the hand Bastardo throws with. Lastly, we repeat this procedure for fixing the saved hand for Bastardo in the fourth inning as well, since he also pitched that inning. Once this is completed, we've finished making the fix. As you can see, fixing a mistake with the sub is an involved process, particularly if you don't catch the error until much later. This is why I strongly recommend being as careful as possible to minimize mistakes involving subs.